Welcome, welcome. Charmaine Hammond and Victoria Bennett here today with a crowdfunding for authors. We love teaching this class for authors and aspiring authors because crowdfunding is definitely an option that is open to all of you, but we find that most authors are not aware that crowdfunding can actually help them generate the revenue they need for getting their book done, published, launched, out there in the world, but it's also a way of building a crowd. And we're going to dive into that in a very few minutes. So if you're just joining us now, Victoria had said maybe pop in the chat box where you are joining us from today. And also, if you have a book or a book that you are wanting to write, if you want to share that in the chat box. And if you have any specific questions that you are hoping we will answer, that'll be great because we've got an hour together, and we'll make sure that we get you all off the call before the top of the hour in case you have to zoom off to somewhere else. And
that's a good pun. I like that one.
I know, I just made that up. It's what I've said today about, I don't know, 3 times. So I think I'm going to have to write that down and remember to use it. Great. Okay. Let me see here.
I was going to say, who do we have joining us today?
Yes. Let's see here. Great. People from all over. Wonderful. Oh, great to see the hi Lee. I see you there. Hi Stephanie.
Oh, have you got some people you know?
I do.
That's
nice. Wonderful.
That's always nice to see that.
You know, with crowdfunding and being an author, we're going to introduce ourselves in just a moment, but one of the sort of facts that I know of after being an author many times over is that a lot of authors lose their steam because they don't have a crowd to sell their book to, so they're constantly just promoting to the same group, or B, they don't have the funds to complete the book and launch the book in the way that they would like to. And this is why I think this session is so valuable. It's for current authors, so folks like who have said in the chat box they've already got a couple of books. Often we want to relaunch our book in other languages, or maybe we want to do a second or a third edition, which my first book is in its second edition now, 11 years after being published. Maybe we want to create wraparound products or services like workbooks and journals, translations, putting the book into an audio format. So if you have a book, this is a program for you. This is a great webinar for you to be on. For those of you that are in the idea stage, as Victoria mentioned earlier, or the writing the book stage, you're at a great place to learn about how crowdfunding can help you. And we also find that on some of these webinars, we have coaches and consultants and entrepreneurs who don't have a book, but they have so much content. They have content through their educational programs and coaching programs, so they want to pull that together to create books, and you're also in the right room. So should we start with some introductions, Victoria?
Yes, why not? So Charmaine is an 11 times best-selling author. You always do this to me, so I'm going to do it back to you. I think I'm correct in saying that your first job was actually working, it may not be your first, but the first one of note was actually working in a prison. Am I correct in saying that?
You are jail guard, correctional officer for 10 years. Yes.
Yes. She's keeping us all in order. But I think one of the things that really I would like to pull out is the fact that as well as being 11 times best-selling author, she has had real success through her career from taking her business or taking a book and turning it into a business and looking at other, and I'm going to talk about other wraparound products like sponsorship. And I know we're not going to get into that today, but there's so many opportunities that come from there. So originally from Alberta, has lived in Vancouver, and now is living in Ontario. And we've known each other for 5 years. And I have to say, you know, it's a real joy to work with Charmaine and her experience, her deep experience, looking at books from a business perspective. So it's really taking that sort of knowledge and turning it into how you can actually have a successful book and also make a business from it.
Thank you, Victoria. Well, as you might be able to tell, Victoria hails from the UK, and she's lived in Canada now for just over 19 years. Does a lot of traveling with her work. One of the things that always surprised me to learn about Victoria when I met her, and I actually love sharing this part of your bio, Victoria, is that we know you as a marketer, we know you as a crowdfunding expert. However, you also studied biochemistry at university, and apparently there is a fit between that and what you do now. Tell us what that fit is.
Yeah, no, I mean, the key thing is it's one of the things about running a crowdfunding campaign is the ability to analyze data. So really measuring everything, like what's working, what's not working, and being able to pivot. I know we're probably not allowed to say the word pivot because we overused it during COVID times, but it's being able to sort of pivot and really see what's being successful with your crowdfunding campaign. So the ability to analyze data, definitely a biochemistry thing, and definitely a crowdfunding thing.
Wonderful. So one of the things I know about you is you're really good at the details. So that might come from that study as well. You've also worked with some incredible brands that many of us have heard of, like Pampers and Tide and TD and NMAX. And you were doing all of this before setting up your own consulting practice over 9 years ago now. And in the work that you do through the Crowdfunding Hub and through your consulting practice as well, you're working with clients on their strategic marketing, setting up their crowdfunding campaigns, coaching them through their different marketing campaigns, helping them with ads for their projects. And I know this is, put your seatbelts on, everyone. So Victoria has been involved in well over 100 crowdfunding campaigns that have collectively generated more than $20 million. Victoria knows how to set up crowd funds for success. She does this all day long with her and her team, setting up crowd funds and supporting clients through the process. So I just feel so blessed to be in the presence of the crowdfunding expert here. And as Victoria said, we've worked with each other over the last 5 years on a variety of different projects. This one is one of my favorites because I'm really passionate about helping authors bring their book to life. And Victoria is really passionate about making sure that authors have the funds and the tools and the resources to do that in a professional way. So I'm thinking we should first of all just do an overview of what crowdfunding is, because I know when I talk to authors, Victoria, a lot of people say they've heard of crowdfunding or they might have seen it for some kind of a project. But generally what I hear from authors is something like this. That can apply for authors? So tell us what it is, and then we'll talk about how it works for authors.
No, absolutely. I mean, like the key really is, activating a community to give you small amounts of money to be able to back your project, and your project can be a book. And I mean, I think that's the real key thing here. Is often people think of sort of the Kickstarters or the Indiegogos or the sort of start engines or wherever everyone's based, where you're sort of putting some money in for a gadget or a widget or whatever. But there's also a huge creative community, and if in fact, if you think back to when modern crowdfunding started, it was a band called Marillion who got all their fans to put a bit of money in to pay for their record. Well, why not a similar sort of thing? Why not get, all your fans or your clients, to really support you so that you can actually launch the book that you have been, you've got inside you that you're so passionate about, the one that they really want to read. So why not activate that for a book as well? And so what we're seeing more and more is books that are actually using crowdfunding for to raise the funds to be able to launch the book. And before I'm going to ask you a question, I mean, the key thing there is you're raising the funds, but in many ways, and I would never say this in public, oh, I am, you're also pre-selling your book. Yeah. So you're also building up sort of people so that when your book, launches, you've already got lots of people signed up who are really excited about your book. They've been supporting you all the way along, and we're going to go into that into more detail. But they're really excited so that when you launch your book, ta-da, you've got these books already sold and you've already got the money in the bank, which is a real help.
Yes. And I just want to capture that before you go into the question you had for me is that when my first book came out, On Toby's Terms, it's a memoir based on my dog, Toby. That's who Toby is. And I worked with an incredible publisher. And one of the things I learned very quickly, this was my first book. I had been published in Chicken Soup for the Soul, but this was my first published book. And I learned that I thought writing the book was really tough. And then I learned, oh, you've actually got to market it and do something with it. And I learned that in a very short time, I felt like I ran out of steam. So the launch was amazing, selling books, and then we're off into the next thing, the next project, the next whatever it is for us. And I learned, and my publisher was also a published author of, I think, 28 books. So she understood what it was like to be in our shoes as the author. And she really helped me understand that we're sort of always in launch mode, in a sense, that we're always selling or marketing our book. It's not one of those, if you build it, they'll come and then they'll just start buying our books without us marketing. So we're always having to be strategic and have an audience to market to. And what Victoria said a few minutes ago is building that community that is not just your own community. Crowdfunding allows you to tap into other people's audiences, what we call OPA, other people's audiences. That's where it gets incredible for authors. So if I look back on my On Toby's Terms launch, I didn't really know about crowdfunding back then. I can tell you that about 6 months in, that's where my momentum started to waver a little bit, and I had to keep kick-starting the motivation to find innovative ways to market the book. But what started to happen is it started to become what we call an evergreen book. It's now 11 years, 12 years actually, since I published the book. It's in its second edition. It still sells, and it sells without me doing as much marketing. I know that when I do a lot more marketing, I sell a lot more books. And that's what we hope for authors, is that their book continues to sell. It isn't just that you launch it, it does well, and then it's done. And
Well,
that's where crowdfunding can help.
I'm actually going to throw something out there, because it's one of the things that really shocked me that you told me about is, that it sells well. But I think you were indicating that most books don't.
Yes, exactly. And I will say something. Your book stops selling when you stop marketing, for the most part. That's really important to us to know. And then the other piece is that, and this is important in understanding how crowdfunding can help us, is that the research tells us that the average author sells about 250 books, which is not enough to pay for all of the costs that you have: the cover design, the editing, the layout, the planning of the launch, the post marketing, all of the print materials that you might need, like bookmarks and postcards and business cards, let alone getting it into audio and having wraparound products. So we need funds as authors to be able to do this and to do it well and serve your book well. And, no matter how you publish, whether you self-publish, whether you're traditionally published, whether you work with a hybrid publisher, whatever your choice is around publishing, remember, we need to have the funds to do our book in the way that we want to, so that we give it life in the right way. In terms of how people fund their books, a lot of people fund it individually on their own. I have seen authors take out money from their retirement, which always scares me, or, having to take out loans, which means the pressure is on to pay the loan back. Other people have applied for grants to cover some of the costs for their book. And other people look at project or funding sources, like crowdfunding, to be able to do that. Other folks, you mentioned pre-sales, actually, Victoria, and that's a really cool element of crowdfunding, is that it does offer opportunity to pre-sell that book, which can really help you with some of the extended marketing that you want to do. One of the things I love doing is selling my books in bulk. In fact, I very rarely sell them one at a time.
You are the master of selling in bulk.
Well, here's the thing. My husband, years ago, when On Toby's Terms came out, I was doing the book signing circuit and all these media interviews and podcasts and presentations. And I'm selling, one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And my husband said, wow, it takes a lot of time to sell one book. Why don't we just try selling like 10? And I thought, wow, that's great. So that seemed like a big jump for me. So what I started doing at book signings is doing what I call a BOGO, buy one, gift one. So when I would do a signing, I would invite people to buy 2 books. one that they keep and one that they give to someone else or donate to a charity. And it almost tripled my book sales at signing. So I thought, this is fun. What about if I up it to 10? What about if I sell it by the box and then by the trunk load, and it goes on and on. So this is where, when Victoria was talking about pre-sales, a crowdfunding campaign allows you within your campaign to sell bulk quantities of your book, which is phenomenal.
And I think, you know, the key there is really targeting the right audience.
Yes.
And I know we'll go into that later,
Yes.
but, you know, sort of, if you, for example, if you think your book would be fantastic for book clubs, target book clubs and get them to buy, you know, 20 copies and stuff like that. You know, those, you know, work out who's really going to benefit from your book. But, you know, I just find it really sad, you know, if you've got a book inside you, you know, you're not writing it in a forest for nobody to read. You know, you really want people out there. You've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. So you just want to make sure it gets read and people get to benefit from the book, whether it's just from reading a story that's really enjoyable or really moving, or whether it's a book that's going to change somebody's life or the way they work or the way they live. You know, each book has a purpose, and it needs to be out there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there was a quick question in there about BOGOs, buy one, gift one. I'll answer that now, just because it's top of mind and what we talked about. The question was, do you suggest a buy one, gift one discount on the books? I never did. If I was doing it at a speaking event, I might, but typically I just, if the book was $20, it was buy two for $40. And people were inspired. You're probably wondering, well, why would they buy two for the same price? Because I attached a charity to it. So people would buy two books, and that second book they bought, the first one they keep, obviously, the second one would go in a basket or a box that I would have right at the signing table, and people would put it in there to donate to my chosen charity for that particular event. With bookstores, they don't want to be discounting a book. So with bookstores, if the signing was there, I never pursued a discount. With some of my own events and private events, I might have done $20 for one book or $35 for two, and then people are getting that discount. So just make sure, if you're doing BOGOs with bookstores, recognize they're not going to want to discount it. But if it's your own event, you have absolutely the flexibility to change your pricing. So Victoria, we've talked about kind of what crowdfunding is, and I love your simplistic description of it, because it really makes us understand that it's a revenue coming from a variety of people contributing to back your campaign, as one of the terminology. One of the things I know about you is that you talk a lot about not only the target audience, knowing who your audience is, which you just mentioned, you also said that it's really important that we know our objectives so that we can plan the right type of campaign for our book so that it is profitable, it is successful. Can you talk a little bit more about objectives?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cash is, you know, we've talked about the cost of writing a book. So typically the amount you raise is going to be one of your objectives, but there are other objectives too. I mean, if we think about some of the authors we've worked with, we've had some authors who want to reposition themselves.
Right.
So they want to be seen as thought leaders. So, you know, in that instance, they're not only looking to raise money to reposition themselves as thought leaders, but they're also wanting to make sure that everything they say and do through the campaign positions them as a thought leader. So, I mean, that could be one. You know, we've seen people who use this as, you know, their book as a business. So yes, selling the book's important, but actually upselling or getting sort of bigger perks, as I might say, because so we're not pre-selling, but bigger perks would be things like, you know, get the book and get, you know, a session, you know, get to join a private webinar, get to, you know, have a one-on-one session, you know, with the book club we talked about earlier, you know, have sort of, you know, 20 people, you know, or 20 copies, and then, you know, you appear and you can actually do a talk to a book club. I mean, how many book clubs would love that, to actually get to speak to the real author behind it? Just mind-blowing.
Yeah, they do love it.
Yeah, and it's just, so it's looking at those different objectives One of the things is it's so flexible, crowdfunding, that you
Right.
can really achieve, look at what your business objectives are,
Mhm.
or if you're writing this book from a personal point of view, what your personal objectives are. And then let's try and match those up with when we design your campaign. I mean, I think that's absolutely key.
Yes. When you talk about designing your campaign, I'm wondering if we should mention some of the different platforms that people have heard of. I know one thing we often hear, just to kind of paint a little picture here, Victoria and I often get emails and calls from authors, often on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, with something like this. I launched my book crowdfunding campaign, and nothing's happening. Nobody's backing it. Nobody's pledging to support to the project. And often, in some cases, what we've heard, first of all, is they've chosen the wrong platform. So I'll give you an example. Victoria's going this is the one that I love sharing, is that a lot of times people will choose GoFundMe for a book campaign because they've seen it for other individuals. But a GoFundMe campaign is really for something personal, like an illness or someone who's had a fire.
It's a donations campaign.
Right.
And I'm just going to say, because I see a lot of people here in North America, but it actually works globally, don't use GoFundMe. Go use Fundraiser, Fundrazr, just as an aside, because it's exactly the same concept, just better, and they take less of your money. So just as a little aside. But yeah, it's a donation. So people are giving to a cause to feel good. That's not a book, unless your book is, say, if you have the latest, greatest addictions book, how to overcome addictions. And what you want is you want people to donate so that you can give this book away for free. That might be a sort of a donations reward, but actually you can do that very much the BOGO idea in a rewards campaign. So with crowdfunding, you've got some donations campaigns, you've got rewards campaigns, so your Kickstarter, Indiegogo. With we've probably seen those, seen campaigns come through on Kickstarter, Indiegogo. There are other platforms out there which may be better. Then you've also got royalties campaigns. So we always have the Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. You've got peer-to-peer where people lend, and then you've got investment campaigns. To be honest, I think most books probably don't fit into those categories. But if you are using your book as a business, then we can definitely look at those other types of campaigns. So it's really the rewards campaign. So people back you, and in return, they get a perk. And I think that's, that's what they're after. And so, they're expecting a reward. So it could be the first access of a new book, or it's an invite to the launch, or it's the book and a follow-up one-on-one session, as I said. There's a transaction there. And what you do is you get your money straight away. And then that allows you to pay the cover designer. That allows you to pay the editor. That allows you to do the promotion. So you get your money in advance. It will actually pay the printer. Let's just think of a minor thing, pay the printer. So you get all that funding up front when you've actually got the demand for the bills to be paid. And you manage people's expectations. So, if you say close your campaign in November, December, and you say, you'll get the book out early 2024, or you could say, I would probably say Q2 2024, because then when you get it out in Q1 2024, everyone just thinks you're amazing. Whereas if you say Q1 2024 and you get it in Q2 2024, everyone's really disappointed. So you actually get that. One of the big things is you're getting your funding up front. And the other thing is, if it absolutely blows out of the water, you've got to print that number of books. Whereas, if you're not quite sure, you may have to print sort of fewer books. And so, that gives you an idea. And one thing I'm just going to mention, because sometimes if we forget to talk about this, is you can also use it as a bit of a sort of tester, so a bit of market research. So you might have a book, and then you might have a journal, and you might have a diary planner. And you could offer all three. So you could end up with a book with a journal, book with a planner, book with a journal planner. And then you see which one gets the most backers.
Yes.
And that is such good market research.
Yeah.
So it's actually market research you haven't paid for, and people are actually paying you to give you their market research, like mind blown. So, it might be that people people only go for your book, and you think, well, actually those wraparound products, nobody's interested in it. So I'm going to save my time and just make a really good book. Or it may be everyone goes for the diary planner, in which case you go, okay, so the journal is, people aren't seeing, and it allows you to think very carefully, like, am I just not communicating it well, so they don't see the value of the journal? Or is it that actually I should be focusing in on that? So market research is really, really important.
Yes, perfect. So I just want to recap so far what we've talked about. We've talked about what crowdfunding is, where we're generating small amounts of money from a wide variety of people, many of whom are not in our immediate circle, because we're tapping into other people's audiences. We've talked about authors being able to use crowdfunding for things like translating their book into other languages, getting the book written, designed, laid out, edited, published, launched. Sometimes we see authors crowdfunding for things like doing a virtual book tour, or an in-person now book tour, or creating those wraparound products and services that Victoria just talked about, creating other formats of their book, so print, digital, and audio, or print, digital, and video training programs. And then Victoria talked about rewards campaigns is the type of crowdfunding that we typically see for authors. And then Victoria also talked about the types of different crowdfunding campaigns, like fundraiser, or Indiegogo, or Kickstarter. And there's a variety of them. One little piece of information I'm going to share with you is that a great way to find out what resonates with you as a reader of books is to actually go on to those different platforms and check out author campaigns. You'll see some that are doing great, and you'll see others that are virtually stagnant. And in the programs that we offer, we actually talk about how to not have that happen for you, how to keep your crowdfunding vibrant. So we're going to get into some tips now. I just wanted to capture where we've gone so far to set that foundation. I'd love to know, just in the chat box, how many of you have seen crowdfunding campaigns before by authors? Give us a thumbs up or a heck yes in the chat box if you've seen a crowdfunding campaign for an author. Let's see. Nope. Okay. So for some of us, it's new. Okay. Seen them for tarot card decks, but not for books. So that's absolutely an option for books. And just quick comment on the question about tax implications. Great to talk to your accounting or your finance advisor on tax implications. But Victoria, did you have any thoughts on what people needed to know about tax implications as an author or a business when they're crowdfunding?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you are raising funds, and so there could be some income tax implication. I mean, unless it's classed as a gift, but that would only really be as a sort of donations campaign. But the thing is that most of the time you're marrying up the raise with a cost. So, you're raising $1,000 to have your cover designed. So money in, money out. So it's a deductible business expense. So you can actually, offset it. So you end up, you're raising funds for a very specific purpose. So you actually usually end up having, very little, once you've sort of done that transaction, that could really be liable for tax. But yeah, and the other thing is just that things like sales tax, and so that's one of the things that can often be some of the platforms will actually help you for. Now the other thing is just one is the global nature of it. I know in the US sometimes there's specific it's very localized, sort of the implications. But again, I found a number of tools that really help with that. So it sounds horrible, but it's actually relatively straightforward. But yeah, for most people, there aren't any real implications because as say, money in, money out. It has a purpose.
Okay. And one of the other pieces I wanted to just visit for a moment, speaking of money and speaking of platforms, is that some of the different crowdfunding platforms, like the crowdfunders, the fundraisers, the Indiegogos, the Kickstarters, some of them have what you've referred to as a keep it all or an all or nothing. Can you explain what that means? Because this,
Yeah.
as you're researching the campaigns, just to see what's resonating with you, make sure you check out the different platforms around how their structure is. But Victoria is going to give you the quick Coles notes here.
Yeah. So, I mean, like we find often people are raising like that 7,500 to 12,500 amount. And what we suggest is you actually put a budget together. And actually from that tax question, it really, really helps because then you can say money in, money out. So put together what do you need, but also think about what's the bare minimum you need to launch your book. And then, you know, and I'll explain the reason why, but say if the minimum you need is that 7,500. If you're on a platform that is what we call all or nothing, and you or you've selected the all or nothing option, and you raise $7,400, you have to give it all back. I know. Yes.
Just so
all that effort. I mean, I would say at that stage, back your own campaign for $100 or just but yeah, I would just to get it over the line. So
can you see that? Say that again, Victoria. So there's a statement in the chat box. Can you say that again, the all or nothing piece?
So with an all or nothing, you have to raise the full amount. Otherwise, you have to give it back. And part of that is to protect the backers and that's why I say choose what the minimum you need to launch your book. Because if you don't get that and you can't launch your book, you know, if at 7,400 you can't launch your book, what are you going to do? Like it's there to protect the backers. So but with the keep it all, you keep it all. And so if you have a less, you know, if you get, you know, going for 7,500 and you get, you know, 7,000, you get to keep it all. And actually one of the things you can do, it's quite cool, is you can actually draw down on that money. So you can actually draw down on it during the campaign, which is great because, you know, if you suddenly get a bill come in, you can go, okay, I need to grab 1,000 out, and, you know, it all gets accounted for, and you can do that. So the thing with that is they tend to be higher fees. We have a few platforms that actually lower fees, but typically it's higher fees to go for the to take it all. But you can see why the platforms do it. It's to protect the backers. But what I will say is this is why we say do the minimum. So put down the minimum that you need to raise to launch your book. And then when you hit that goal, you can go, yay, you know, we hit our 7,500, you know, we're going to produce the book. Now we want to produce the planner. So our next goal is going to be this. And then when you hit that next goal, you go, yay, we've hit that next goal. And the next thing we're going to do is an audio book. Yay, you know, now that, so it allows you to have a different story each time. It allows you to keep talking about success, and success breeds success. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is to sort of give you an opportunity to tell a different story or to give it a different angle, and to make it new and fresh in people's minds. Because if you just say, back my campaign, you know, everyone's going to be bored to tears. They're never going to open your emails. They're never going to take, you know, it's just, and you don't want to be in that situation. Whereas if you come with something fresh each week, then people are excited and they want to know more, and they want to be supportive of you because they think, you know, what you're doing is really cool. And you know, it's all about that preparing people and then taking people on the journey with you. And you'll find that some people will back your campaign. And you will find that some people actually, you know, your book on parenting is of no interest to them because they have no children and they have no interest in children, but they really like what you're doing and they will share it with their friends. So, you know, it's one of the things that we're always trying to do is that, you know, is trying to get if a third of the funds come from the people you know, a third come from the people they know, and a third comes from additional activities. If we can get that third of the people you know to tell all their friends who've got children, hey, my friend's writing this great book about parenting. Her kids are amazing. I think it's going to be a great book. It'll be amazing how many of those, because it's that endorsement, it's trust, and it's all about building trust.
Absolutely. So back to the keep it all or all or nothing, what we see, I'm glad you explained both, because we've had calls from authors who are like, what's going on? Why can't I keep this money? They didn't know that they didn't click the button for keep it all. And some campaigns don't allow you, or some platforms don't allow
you to switch.
It's only
they either don't allow it,
right,
or they don't allow you to switch. I mean, it's yeah.
So we see most authors choosing the platforms that have the option to keep it all. And then they set their campaign up on that platform to then have the funds delivered to them as the funds come in through the crowdfund, which allows them to, as Victoria said, pay the editing, pay the cover design, whatever it is that you put in your budget. And then, of course, the other piece is Victoria talked about what we call stretch goals. So we see authors at that 75 to 12,000 kind of goal of crowdfunding typically to start. And then they might increase it to, as Victoria said, we reached that goal. Now we're looking for another 7,000.
Yeah.
We reach that goal. We need 2,700 for this. One of the authors that I've been in conversations with is doing something really cool. They have a book that is of interest to schools and to parents. And so what they're doing is they're doing kind of mini campaigns. And I think they're going to use Fundraiser to do this. So it's like a campaign within a campaign. So they have their book campaign, and then they're going to be reaching out to say, hey, we have a school in San Diego that wants to have books for their the students, and a presentation by the author. Can you help support this community school? So they're doing kind of campaigns within campaigns. And so these are the things that you're going to be looking for based on your goals and objectives for your book, as Victoria talked about, based on and compared to what the different campaigns can, or the crowdfunding platform, can offer you. And I want to go back to something really important that you said, Victoria. You were talking about the planning process. So the work that we do with authors, we work on that 90-day plan. And you mentioned the third. And I want you to repeat that again, because this is really important for people. Can you say the thirds again?
Yeah. So a third comes from people you know, a third comes from the people they know, and a third comes from your additional activities. Now, you might say, like, I don't know, if you're writing a book in paleontology, you might say, I don't know anybody else in paleontology, so who am I going to sort of write to? But the thing is that you, and it's one of the things that, we've helped so many authors do, is how do you reach out to everybody that is actually in your network, and who actually is in your network, and how do you do it in such a nice way that they don't feel offended, or in fact all they do is they feel like really supportive and they want to help you with your campaign. As I say, they may back your book, they may share, but we'll get them to do one or the other. So I think that's the key thing. When we talk about other activities, I mean, the sort of things that we've seen great success with are things like podcasts. We've had a lot of authors go through and start getting onto the podcast circuit, and really getting backers through that. In fact, we've even heard of podcast owners interviewing authors and then backing. So it's not just the people listening. But then there's also things like press releases. There may be events. So there's lots of other things that you can do, and it's all about building trust. And one of the big things to think about is, typically when you buy a book, you have no idea who the person behind your book is. And so, for that first third of people that know you, they know who you are. They may not know you as an author. So you're educating them about that. For the next third, they may not know you, that you're Charmaine's sister, sort of like, they may not know who you are. And so you're giving them a chance to get to know you. And then for that final third, They have no clue who you are,
Mhm.
but they get a chance to actually get to know you as an author. And that is huge. And I mean, that's one of the biggest sort of opportunities with crowdfunding, is that backers get to know you and you get to know the backers.
Yeah.
And how nice must it be to know what the impact of your book is?
Mhm.
And it's something that we haven't mentioned, but I feel very strongly about is, I'm really sorry, I'm going to burst a bubble. Your book is not for everybody on this planet.
Mhm.
Your book has a target audience, and that target audience is probably very tight. When I talked about the parents book, it probably isn't for all parents. It's probably for parents who, have got one child and they're introducing a sibling, or it's for parents who, want to, don't want to be helicopter parents, or parents who are helicopter parents. Or there's going to be a specific niche that your book absolutely resonates with.
Mhm.
And you need to identify that. And you need to think about, at the end of this book, how do I want people to feel?
Yes.
And it could be, this is a story a story about a person, and at the end of it I want people to feel sort of enriched and enlightened. At the end of it, it doesn't matter what type of book it is, but you have a very clear outcome you want of it, and there's going to be a specific person that's going to resonate with, and that's who you're going to be going after. So your network is going to help you find those people, and those other activities are going to help you find those people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, really important. And to make sure that you have that planning time, it's essential to make sure you have that 90 days. That's where those rescue calls come in. We get people who on Friday plan a campaign and launch it on Sunday. And it's going to fail because, and we need to prime our audience. We need to build our audience. There's things that we need to do, like build the landing page, properly set up the crowdfund in the platform we've chosen, create compelling graphics, tell our story, like Victoria said, and prime our supporters so that they are ready when we press launch. They have pre-written social media copy, pre-written email copy, so they can easily go on and be champions for you and share it. So make sure that if you're looking at crowdfunding, and what Victoria and I teach in our crowdfunding for author programs is 90 days. And that will pretty much ensure that you are setting your campaign up for success. And Victoria was also talking about, people getting to know the author and being able to message your book to that specific audience, not everyone, that specific audience that you're trying to reach. And this is an example today, for example, you're on today's call or webinar probably because you're interested in being an author, you are an author, and you're looking for different ways to market and sell your book or fund the different activities that are involved in bringing your book to life or bringing it to life again. We haven't invited the whole world. We've invited authors, aspiring authors, and content creators. And so that's how niche down you want to get when you're looking at your communication for your crowdfunding, so that you're writing and speaking to your audience specifically.
Yeah. And I think, we talk about sort of hearing from them, or the benefit of them hearing from the authors, but I'm going to also say the benefit of you hearing from them. So, in that 90-day process, it might be that you get the cover design come through. Well, how cool is it if you've got people who are interested in your book and you've got their emails, and you can send them an email going, hey, I've got this cover design. What do you think? Hey, we're thinking of this title. What do you think? You're getting that research. Again, it's that back to that market research, but people are going to be so excited that, oh, I helped design that cover. Oh, I helped, name this book. I mean, that is just something that people don't typically get to do. And they're going to be so engaged with your book. They're going to be so passionate. They'll be the ones sort of, when they're at the book club, or when they're at their out on the pub on a Friday night, they'll be talking about it, because it's not an experience that people normally get to have.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly valuable both ways.
I agree. So we're really interested in hearing what other questions you have, what's popping up. So for many of you today, and for those of you listening to the recording later, crowdfunding might be completely new. You know, you've maybe never heard of it, or you've heard of it but didn't think that it could be for authors. Some of you have heard about it. You know it can be for authors, and you're trying to figure out how you can use it for your book project. So wherever you are in that spectrum, let us know what your questions are. Today's a great opportunity to answer those, and as well, if you need to get feedback on an idea. So thank you. There's a question around what is the first step? So assuming you have an audience, excellent question. And we're always building our audience, by the way. Our audience is always being rebuilt. Our email list is always being nurtured because people fall off our email list. But I love this question. What's the first step?
Well, I think you actually identified something earlier, which I would say is the very first thing I would do is have a look at other campaigns, you know, and just, you know, it's one thing I'll say is it's not quick and it's not easy. So, you know, there's a process, you know, follow it. It really is a step-by-step guide to sort of how to actually launch a successful campaign, but it isn't build it and they will come. So I think, you know, I would look at other campaigns, but I'd also look at, you know, what you're trying to achieve and make sure you have that time commitment to it. Because but I think you would have to have that anyway. I mean, as you talked about any marketing, you would need to be doing it. So I'm going to cough.
Yeah. And I think the other piece around the first step is so really starting to look at what are the goals and objectives for your campaign, being super clear on who the audience is that you're reaching, and understanding where do they hang out. So for example, if I was writing a book for my corporate audience that I do a lot of speaking and training for, I'm not even probably going to bother with Facebook because as professionals, that's not where they hang out. LinkedIn is where I'm going to spend a lot more time researching those LinkedIn groups and building my LinkedIn community. So we really want to know where people hang out. So, and then I think the other piece around that, the first step, so you've researched campaigns, you're starting to give thought to your goals and objectives, what you're actually crowdfunding for, who your audience is for. Then we really want to start looking at the plan. Victoria and I teach this 90-day plan in our programs, which you really want to look at what's your goal around launch date and then work backwards.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting about Julie's question is it's, you know, if you already have an audience and it's, you know, educating them about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think that's probably the key thing there to that one.
And the next question was, how often would you say the author is in charge of printing and mailing the books or products in the end versus not having to be responsible for that? So great question.
Yes.
And there's a few ways to answer this. So Victoria, I'll let you answer it from the platform perspective, and then I'm going to answer it from kind of the longer term around what we see authors do.
Absolutely. So, you know, when you fulfill your campaign, so one of the things that you want to do is by having everybody's email, you're able to keep them in touch. You'll be able to say it's being printed, you know, it's being shipped, etc. So you're managing people's expectations, which buys you a bit of time. What we've seen as different ways is you can actually use companies, and this is exactly what they do, is you send them a load of books and they will ship them all out for you. Or you can get the platform, you know, to do it. Some of the platforms have that as well. The other thing that we've seen is authors have used Amazon Prime. And so they ship it out from Amazon from Amazon Prime. And of course, that means no shipping. And so it's going across, you know, wherever they want. The downside with that, we talked about the personal relationship, is it's more difficult to put a little personal note in, to personalize, to sort of put some extra little swag item in, you know, something that's relevant to you. So so some people do choose to do it themselves. Great job for a child, great job, please pay them. You know, great sort of, you know, somebody, you know, you can hire to help you sort of do the pick and packing. Or it's something you can do yourself, you know, really depends on what your time is. You've got to think of the cost of your time and cost it in to your whole campaign.
Yes.
Cost in the shipping, cost in the picking and packing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some platforms that actually do the shipping at the end, and it's between the platform and the backer. So you don't get involved in that, and that's fantastic. So it allows you to, sometimes you see campaigns like on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, this rate to ship to North America, and this rate to ship to Europe, and this rate to ship to Australia. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to calculate it out, because it's surprising how heavy a book can be. And especially if you want a good quality book, with good quality paper, that's going to make it heavier. So that actually takes that calculation out, and that's handled by the platform. So that's another way to do it. So as you're probably gathering, many ways to skin this cat.
Yes. And some of it will also depend on how you're publishing. So for example, with my On Toby's Terms book, that's traditionally published. So I can't order books from the printer or go print them myself. I order them from the publisher, and then I send those out. And I actually really love that process, because nothing gives me more joy than writing that personal note, taking out that Sharpie marker and signing my name in that book. Every time I do that, even though this book came out 12 years ago, every time I do that, it feels special. It also allows me to put in my marketing material, my bookmarks, any marketing materials that I want to go with the book. Sometimes I print off a letter that reminds people that once they've read their book, we love a review of it, and we tell people how to do that. So some of it will depend on how you're publishing. Some of it will depend on the platform and the goals that you have. One client we were talking to wants to be able to send out the book with some other products that they have. So the platform isn't going to have those other products. They're going to manually send those out, but they have included in their campaign budget, their crowdfunding campaign budget, the cost to pay someone to do that. The person to head down to the post office, put the postage on it, all of that goes in their crowdfunding budget. Because what you don't want is, at the end of your campaign, you've generated incredible revenue. Let's say you generate 15,000 or 20,000, but you haven't included all these other things, and then all of a sudden there's less funding in there. So that's going to be really important for you.
Yeah, completely agree.
And we'll make sure, thank you. There's a comment in the box that someone had to leave to run to another meeting, but we will definitely be providing our contact information for people.
Yes.
And there was a question around the costs of hiring someone to handle the campaign, and how do they reach you? So we'll make sure that we get the contact information in the follow-up email that comes with the recording. I would say, Victoria, sometimes we see people hire like a virtual assistant to help them with some of the email, or we've seen people hire a VA, a virtual assistant, to set up the landing page, or sometimes they hire someone like your crowdfunding team to actually develop the marketing strategy, handle the social media, handle some of those logistical pieces. And then some authors do it all on their own. So it's going to be really what serves you and what you can handle as well.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is all about marketing. So it depends what skill set you have. And, for some people it's already in their sort of knowledge, and it's very easy to add. And then for some, they use a VA today to do it. And it's just getting to know those tips and tricks. That's the key thing. It isn't a standard marketing campaign. So it's just getting to know those little ways of doing it. But the benefits, and one of the things that we've seen, I mean, just the satisfaction that's come out of it, that people have, run a campaign, but because of that connection to the backers, just so much more meaning than just launching their book.
Absolutely. Well, building their database. We've seen authors who have added hundreds and thousands of people to their email list, to their database. We've watched student campaigns, and we're watching their metrics go up on social media. So, they might have started out with a small following, and now they have a large following on social media, or all of a sudden they're getting podcast interviews. And being featured in the media, traditional media, about their books. So there's so many benefits and ways that crowdfunding can help you with this marketing engine. And Victoria and I put on regular classes that are a deeper dive from today. So we take people into that 90-day planning cycle, all of the core steps that need to be handled, things to look for in your crowdfund campaign, mistakes to avoid. And so we do those in our crowdfunding for author master classes and our longer programs that we offer.
And I mean, you know, mention mistakes, but it's just like, if you don't know, you don't know. So
exactly,
it's just, you know, one of the things we want to do is just to help you follow the step-by-step guide so that you don't don't make those mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, as I say, it's a bit of gamification. So, you know, that's what we can bring to the table, is our experience.
Yes. Yeah. And we've got another masterclass coming up before the end of 2023. So our masterclass that dives deep into this. So we'll be sending information out with the date for that. And for those of you that this resonates with, if you want to be able to go deeper into learning and actually planning your campaign, you'll be receiving information about that. And how to make sure that you plan your campaign in a way that's going to be successful. Victoria knows what works. I've seen what works and doesn't work, and that's why we just want to help you avoid those costly mistakes so that you can actually have fun with your campaign. I have a little saying, I don't know if I shared this with you, Victoria, but I always say, if it's not fun, this is for me. So I'm not speaking for everyone. If it's not fun, it doesn't get done. That's in my world. So I have to always create fun out of something that can feel new or difficult or a big learning curve for me.
Yes. I like that. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for attending today. It's been great. And thank you for the thank you I just seen in the chat. And I'm so passionate about crowdfunding, and I love its flexibility, and I love the outcome of it. And so if it's a good fit, would love to work with you and see how we can work together.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. And again, Victoria, always a pleasure to work with you.
It's great as ever, Charmaine. We went in a different way to us normal conversation, but actually I think we covered everything.
We covered everything and then some. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Victoria. And we will see you all soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.